Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Guys to Magic. This is Hunter and Steven. Say what up, Steven.
Hey, what's up, guys?
We are back taking a look at the $300 upgrade to the Mutant Menace deck. That is right. That is the Precon deck from the Fallout Universes Beyond of Magic the Gathering. Very excited to see it. If you guys haven't already seen it, this is a sequel. So check the $100 upgrade video down in the description below. But before we get into all of the new spicy additions that Steven has in store for us for this new 300 deck, Steven, talk to me about the commander and kind of what the deck does.
Yeah, so the commander I went with in the 100 is going to be the same in the 300. It is the Wise Mothman. It is one, a black, a green, and a blue for a legendary creature insect mutant. It is a 3/3 with flying. It also says whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, each player gets a rad counter. If you don't know what a rad counter is, a rad counter says at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, if you have any rad counters, mill that many cards. For each non-land card milled this way, you lose 1 life and a rad counter. The Wise Mothman also says whenever one or more non-land cards are milled, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to X target creatures, where X is the number of non-land cards milled this way. So we're milling, boys.
Oh, you are our resident mill player. I can't describe how terrified I am of this deck.
Yeah, I am. I'm very excited. What I am not excited about, for people who love the Fallout series, I am going to apologize ahead of time. I definitely bit into this a little bit more than I normally would, but I do love Mill, and this deck was basically made for that.
Alrighty. Well, let's not keep the people waiting. Let's go ahead and talk about your additions. But before we get into the new spicy ones, as a reminder, on the screen right now are all of the same additions that you are keeping from the 100 into this new $300 deck, right?
Yep, 100% of those cards that I added to the 100 are staying.
Alrighty. Well, let's talk about it. Hit me with these new creatures for this $300 edition.
Yeah, let's talk about the big bad Fennex God of Deception. This is 3, a blue and a black for a legendary enchantment creature god. It's a 4/7. It's also indestructible, which is great. I love that. It also says as long as your devotion to blue and black is less than 7, Fennex isn't a creature. And it says creatures you control have tap. Target player puts the top X cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard, where X is this creature's toughness. We are a very good deck for +1/+1 counters. We have a lot of proliferation in the deck. This is going to get out of hand very quickly.
I can see that. The god is going to hurt.
I also threw in Riddle Keeper. This is 2 and a blue for a creature homunculus. This is a 1/4. It says whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, that creature's controller puts the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard. You know, I'm kind of tired of seeing all these ghostly prisons and stuff like that. So, yeah, let's have some fun with this one.
Already seeing how this deck is going to be super annoying. Your Wise Mothman is going to get out of hand quickly. I'm afraid for that commander damage.
Yeah, the commander damage is going to be unreal. Also, I do love the fact that this deck has some pretty big booties with the creatures. So FedEx and the Riddle Keeper being a 1/4, it's going to get out of hand, and I'm very excited.
All right, that looks like it's the only creatures we're throwing in here. What are some of these sorceries?
Yeah, so first one I threw in was Fractured Sanity. This is 3 blue. It says each opponent mills 14 cards. You can also cycle this for 1 and a blue, and then whenever you cycle Fractured Sanity, each opponent mills 4 cards.
Just a quick 14, no big deal.
Just a quick 14. Listen, it's not that big of a deal. Wise Mothman's out. It's it could probably one-shot somebody right after this spell. I also put Maddening Cacophony in the deck. This is 1 and a blue. It also has a kicker cost of 3 and a blue. So 6 total mana invested into this. If you do kick it, it is really, really good. But it says each opponent mills 8 cards. If it was kicked instead, each opponent mills half their library rounded up. No biggie.
Oh, biggie. Just going to have to figure out what half my library is.
Yeah, this is kind of a... This one does suck because you basically... Every opponent has to count their deck. So it does take a little bit of time, but it is pretty fun. It is a card that... If you're playing Mill in this format, I feel like you have to throw it in. Mind Grind is up next. This is X, a blue and a black. It says each opponent reveals cards from the top of his or her library until he or she reveals X land cards. Then puts all cards revealed this way into his or her graveyard. X cannot be zero. Uh, if I got a lot of mana and I don't know what to do with it, let's grind some mines.
Grind some mines. Just don't play this card, please.
But Hunter, I know what you're thinking. Wow, Steven, that's a lot of mill. What are you going to do with all those milled cards? Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do, Hunter. I'm going to play Rise of the Dark Realms. This is a pretty hefty investment, but usually this card does have a really nice payoff. This is 7 and 2 black. Put all creature cards from all graveyards onto the battlefield under your control.
Oh boy. If it gets to this point in the game where you're playing this card, I think I just scoop, right?
I mean, hopefully you got fun things in your graveyard. I know I will.
I probably will if you're playing this card. All right, Steven, those are all of the sorceries. I am seeing some instants here as well. Talk to me.
All right, let's go ahead and start off with the big, the bad, the Cyclonic Rift. This is 1 in a blue, also known as the Baby Rift. Return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. It also has Overload for 6 in a blue. If you cast a spell for its Overload cost, change its text by replacing all instances of target with each. It's pretty casual.
No big deal. Just bounce everything.
Yeah, so if I don't like what you guys have on the field, I know board wipes take a long time and make the games a little bit longer. This is just to help make the game a little faster.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, we do have Fierce Guardianship. This is 2 in a blue. If you control your commander, you may cast this spell without paying its mana cost. Counter target non-creature spell. So, I probably alluded to board wipes. I know you have a few in your deck, and I'm sure, Shane and David also. I don't want them to happen, so here we are. And the last instant I threw in is Swan Song for 1 blue, counter target enchantment, instant or sorcery spell. Its controller puts a 2/2 blue bird creature token with flying onto the battlefield. You guys might have some fun stuff in your deck, but instead I'd like you to have a 2/2 blue bird.
Yeah, dude, all 3 of these are really annoying blue cards. I am not hoping you play any of them. Well, those are your instants. Those are your sorceries. What about more permanent cards? Talk to me about these artifacts.
Yep, well, you can't have mill if you don't have Mesmeric Orb. You know what I mean? So this is 2 mana. It's a beautiful artifact that says whenever a permanent becomes untapped, that permanent's controller puts the top card of his or her library into his or her graveyard.
Cool. I hate this card. Every time I want to untap upkeep, my untap step just gets... My upkeep makes me sad.
But this does also affect me. Permanents untapping on my side. We might mill some lands. So I went ahead and threw Crucible of Worlds. This is 3 mana. It says you may play land cards from your graveyard. So I'm never not hitting my land drops. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. Easy and to the point. Let's go ahead and move on to the enchantment section. I'm seeing some 3 spicy ones.
Yes, 3 very spicy ones. So first one we have up here is going to be Bloodchief Ascension. This is 1 black. It says at the beginning of each end step, if an opponent lost 2 or more life this turn, you may put a quest counter on Bloodchief Ascension. Then, whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, if Bloodchief Ascension has 3 or more quest counters on it, you may have that player lose 2 life. If you do, you gain 2 life. So obviously we are in a beautiful format where it is 4 players. Everyone's going to be attacking each other. I just hope you do at least 2 damage.
Yeah. I'm going to be attacking a lot of people. I'm going to go wide strategy with Hail Caesar, so...
Probably coming right at me.
You never know.
We also have Memory Erosion. This is 1 and 2 blue. It says whenever an opponent casts a spell, that player puts the top 2 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. I don't mind if you guys play spells. Just gotta pay a tax. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I'm seeing this. That'll just keep milling everybody, huh?
Yeah, I mean, feel free to cast whatever you like. Just remember, there's a tax. And the last enchantment I added is going to be Ristic Study. Drawing cards wins games, and drawing cards will help me mill you guys a little faster. So this is 2 and a blue. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may draw a card unless that player pays 1. So now you're milling cards when you cast spells, and hopefully you don't pay the 1.
I never pay the 1. Go ahead and draw your card. All right, Steven. Rounding it up, I see 1 land you're adding in here. What is this one?
So we do have some pretty fun artifacts in our deck, and I want to make sure we keep them on the field. But unfortunately, we do play a format where, destruction of my fun things is a thing. So Academy Ruins is a land that I added. This is a legendary land. You can tap it, add a colorless to your mana pool. You can also pay 1 and a blue. You can tap it, put target artifact card from your graveyard on top of your library. So feel free to destroy my artifacts. Maybe Mesmeric Orb, maybe Crucible Worlds, but I promise you I will get it back.
Okay. I see what's happening here. I see the meanness. I'm not a fan. Just because I know I'm going to get hurt. But is that it? Is that all of your additions?
Yeah, those are all the additions. I added a bunch of mill cards to the 100. Just kind of wanted to round it off with some fun cards that I really wanted to add to the 100. But, here we are now.
Okay. Well, here we are indeed, because we are at the point where you mentioned before you're a bit sad because you are going to have to be removing some cool Fallout cards to make room for all these really cool additions. But before we get into the very cool new cuts, as a reminder, on the screen right now, these are all the cuts you're keeping from your $100 upgrade. Is that right?
Yep, these are all the cuts from the 100. I did not add anything back in. They were removed for a reason, and they're going to stay there.
Okay. Speaking of new removals, talk to me about these new ones.
Yep, and like you alluded to, if you want to keep the deck, to a certain style, that is up to you. This is how I wanted the deck to be, so these are the cards that I wanted to cut. First one up is going to be Agent Frank Horrigan. This is 5, a black and a green for a legendary creature mutant warrior. It's an 8/6 with trample. It has indestructible as long as it attacked this turn. And then whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, proliferate twice. I tried to keep as many proliferate cards as possible because obviously we want to get as many of those rad counters up on our opponents to make sure they're milling as much as they possibly can. This one is a fun one. 7 mana is quite the investment. I rather spend that 7 mana, I don't know, maybe like on a Cyclonic Rift or something like that. So I went ahead and cut this bad boy. Bloatfly Swarm is up next. This is 3 and a black for a creature insect mutant. It's a 0/0. It's got flying, and then when it enters the battlefield, it gets 5+1/+1 counters on it. If damage would be dealt to Bloatfly Swarm while it has +1/+1 counters on it, prevent that damage, remove that many +1/+1 counters from it, then give each player a rad counter for each +1/+1 counter on it removed this way. Wow, it's a lot of text to say. I'm not going to lie to you. I think that's why I cut this card. There's a lot of reading. So this is a fun one. I like it. 4 mana for a 5/5 with flying. Does it do what I wanted to do to a certain extent? I just feel like this kind of really only gets maybe 5 blocks, if not, you're swinging with 1/1s. Most of the time, at least when I fight you guys in commander battles, everything that's swinging at me is pretty big. So I went ahead and just cut this one. Jason Bright, Glowing Prophet is up next. We have 2 and a blue for a legendary creature, Zombie Mutant Advisor. It's a 2/3. Whenever a zombie or mutant you control dies, if its power was different from its base power, draw a card. It also says, come fly with me. It's 2 mana, sacrifice a creature, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. It gains flying until end of turn. I just didn't really care for this card. For the strategy that I'm trying to run with the mill, it doesn't make too much sense for me to keep it in. Obviously, we were growing cards with proliferation, but I got rid of most of those cards in this upgrade, so it didn't really make much sense in the deck. Lily Bowen, Raging Grandma. 3 and a green for a legendary creature, mutant warrior. It's a 0/0. It's got vigilance, and when it enters the battlefield, it comes in with 2 +1/+1 counters on it. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, double the number of +1/+1 counters on it if its power is 16 or less. Otherwise, remove all but one of those counters. Then you gain 1 life for each +1/+1 counter removed this way. Again, it's not helping us with Rad. It's not helping us with Mill. Yes, it could get big, but I just don't care. It doesn't have trample, so sweet it has vigilance. Again, doesn't make sense.
Yeah, so far I totally agree with all these cuts. They're just not doing the mill thing that you want to do, and the mill is going to be such a powerhouse of a strategy that I'm terrified of it. But still, these cards don't make sense. Talk to me about some more creatures.
Yep, so I just have 3 more creatures to be removed from this deck. So Cathedral Acolyte. This is 1 and a green for a creature, human cleric. It's a 1/2. Each creature you control with a counter has Ward 1. It also has tap it, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature that entered the battlefield this turn. This is a fun card. It comes down turn 2, you got to wait, and then you put something else. It's a little slow. Again, it's not helping with our mill strategy. The Ward 1, I think, is, funny enough, flavor text. I feel like at this point, in a $300 upgrade, people are going to be able to pay the 1. Didn't really bother me too much to get rid of this. Corpse Jack Menace is up next. It's 2, a black and a green for a creature, Fungus. It's a 4/4. It's basically a hardened skills. If 1 or more +1/+1 counters will be put on a creature you control, twice that many +1/+1 counters are put on it instead. 4 mana for a card that just doubles the counters. Nope. It's gone. And the last creature I got rid of is Whining Constrictor. It is a black and a green for a creature snake 2/3. If 1 or more counters would be put on an artifact or creature you control, that many +1 each of those kinds of counters are put on that permanent instead. If you would get 1 or more counters, you get that many +1 of each of those kinds of counters instead. Just no. Just in general. No.
Yeah, there's a reason why all 3 of these cards are uncommon. So it makes sense why you're cutting them out. They're just not as powerful as some of the cards you put in. Okay, so those are all the creatures. I am seeing that you're cutting, looks like 1 instant.
Yep, so I did get rid of Biomass Mutation. This is X, a blue and a green, and a blue and a green. Creatures you control have base power and toughness XX until end of turn. This is a good card if we were going with the other strategy you can go with this deck, which is +1/+1 counters. I obviously strayed away from that. You can definitely put this back in if that's the way you want to go. This is a great card, especially as an instant. Just not really going with the theme of the deck, so went ahead and chucked it.
Okay, I can see why you did that cut as well. Not necessarily needed. I am seeing some artifacts you are removing as well. What are these ones?
Yeah, I did remove 3 artifacts from the deck. First one is going to be Contagion Clasp. This is 2 mana, and it says, whenever it enters the battlefield, put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. You can also pay for, tap it, and proliferate. Just 4 mana investing in this card. I've never really enjoyed this card. I know it's got a place in some decks, but it's just not in this deck. The -1/-1 counter on a target creature is fun, especially in the early game, but I feel like I always draw this card way too late in the game for it to matter for me. The second artifact to get cut is going to be the Nuke Launcher. This is 2 for an artifact equipment. It says equipped creature gets +3/+0 and has Intimidate. And then it also says whenever an equipped creature attacks until the end of defending player's next turn, that player gets 2 rad counters whenever they cast a spell. It has an equip cost of 3. I do like this card. It does help us with the rad counters. Just 5 mana to invest in this card, and hopefully you're putting this on a card that can attack that turn. It's too much. And the last card in the artifact category I'm getting rid of is going to be Recon Craft Theta. This is 4 mana for an artifact vehicle. It's a 4/4 with flying. And whenever it enters the battlefield, create a 0/0 blue alien creature token. Put a +1/+1 counter on it. And then whenever it attacks, you get to proliferate and crew 2. Again, we're going with a mill strategy. The proliferation is really nice. I like the fact that it's got a cheap crew 2 cost, but I don't need it. I don't need it.
Yeah, it's a bummer that the alien it makes can't even crew this either. Obviously, there's some flavor there that we both don't know because we're not Fallout players, but I can see why you got all 3 of these out of the deck. You're trying to do a strategy here. These don't fit that strategy. Moving on to, looks like 3 more cards that probably don't fit your strategy in the enchantment department. What are these ones?
Yep, just like you said, man. I went with mill. A lot of these cards are going to go ahead and do +1/+1 counter strategies. So unfortunately, I did get rid of 2 really good ones. So this is Branching Evolution. This is 2 and a green. It says whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters would be put on a creature you control, twice that many +1/+1 counters are put on it instead. And then Hardened Scales, kind of the same thing, just for 1 mana. Two really good cards and +1/+1 matters decks. The way I built this deck, it's not a +1/+1 matters anymore. So just had to go. And the last enchantment I got rid of is going to be Vault 12, the Necropolis. This is 4 and 2 black for a saga. Its first lore chapter says each player gets 3 rad counters. Second chapter says create X 2/2 black zombie mutant creature tokens, where X is the total number of rad counters among players. And the last chapter, chapter 3, says put 2+1/+1 counters on each creature you control that's a zombie or mutant. I did remove a lot of creatures from this deck, from the 100 and the 300. Just not really trying to do the swing strat, just trying to do the mill strat.
Yeah, it hurts my heart to see some of these +1/+1 counter cards leave the deck because, as anybody that's watched this channel long enough knows, I am that guy with the +1/+1 counters. But you've said it before, you're continuing to say it. It is not the strategy you're going with, so I completely understand removing all 3 of these cards. And to wrap things up, I'm seeing 1 removal for the Academy Ruins that you added. What is this land?
This is the land that I always get in my opening hand. This is Temple of the False God. This is tap, add 2 colorless, activate only if you control 5 or more lands.
Yeah, I am completely on board with you. I always, 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 it'll be my first draw every time it's in my deck. Never seems to fail. And then I mana stall, and this does nothing. Easy cut. But is that going to do it? Is that all of your additions and removals?
Hunter, those are all of my additions and removals.
All right, Steven. Well, we were given $300 to make this deck even better. What is the total amount of money you spent on all of your additions?
Well, I'm not a big fat cheater like you guys. At the time of this recording, this upgrade is $299.38. Some room to spare.
Wow, that is some room to spare. I'm proud of you.
Thank you, Hunter.
But before we wrap things up, Steven, do you want to go ahead and talk to the people one more time about what you think about this deck overall and how it runs?
You know, Hunter, I really do enjoy this deck. The Wise Mothman is a fantastic commander. You can build it a ton of different ways, whether you're trying to do mill, mutants, +1/+1 counters. I mean, you can even go the infect route if you're trying to be mean. You know, I'm just trying to mill. I don't want to be mean. I don't want to be an infect player like Shane. But, you know, the Fallout flavor is really good. I think the deck as is was super solid. I actually really enjoyed just the precon right out of the box. But let's have some fun and let's make our opponents really sad. And that's kind of what I wanted to do.
As your future opponent with this deck, I don't make me sad, please.
I'm going to make you sad.
That's a bummer. But that is going to do it for us. If you guys wanted to see Steven's full deck list and playtest it yourself, check the description. You will find a link to our Moxfield account. While you're in the description, you will also find links to all of our social media accounts. That's at Guys at Magic for TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. Follow us on those as well. Like this video if you liked it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Don't miss out on any of the cool content we're doing. Stay subscribed because we got some cool stuff coming. Also on the screen right now, those are all of our Patreon subscribers. Thank you guys so much for your added support. It means the world to us. If you guys wanted to see what they are seeing that's not here on YouTube, check the link in the description for our Patreon account and consider subscribing. Also comment down below. Let Steven know. Did he add something that you wouldn't have added? Maybe you taken this deck in the direction that he didn't take it in. Let us know. Always interested to hear what you guys have to say. And until the next video, hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Peace.
Goodbye.